Hello, my wonderful friends! Welcome back to our PettyRevenge channel, where you'll hear stories about people who went for the smaller victories against someone instead of completely ruining their lives. Friends, I love PettyRevenge because I find the stories absolutely hilarious, and sometimes I even learn a thing or two. In this episode, there are going to be 10 stories. The first story features Opie and his girlfriend getting petty revenge on their messy roommates. The second story is about how Opie defeated an entitled Karen. The third story involves Opie getting a porch pirate evicted, and we'll finish up with a petty revenge tale involving good old grandma. My friends, I hope you stay for the stories today, and do hit that subscribe button if you want to hear more petty revenge stories in the future. Let's dive in. This happened last month. By some universal coincidence, my girlfriend and I ended up living with another couple in a rented house to split costs. It was a big house, so each couple had their own bathroom and bedroom, and we shared the common areas like the kitchen and living room. The house was originally owned and rented out by a CO worker who, at the time of this story, was no longer living there. However, all the furniture was his, and he gifted it all to me when he left. The other couple was really annoying. They would leave their dirty dishes in the sink with rotten food and only wash them on the weekend. They also let their dog leave messes all over the house. One time, the guy was cooking in a pair of torn-up shorts with his underwear clearly visible, which made my girlfriend really uncomfortable. Anytime I talked to them about the issues that bothered us, they would improve for a few days, but then all their bad habits came right back. The final straw was this past summer. It was really hot, and these folks liked the air conditioning at full blast day and night, even when they weren't home. If I turned it off, they would get mad and immediately turn it back on after telling me how they couldn't sleep without the AC at maximum. Okay, fine. So, I did my best to wear a hoodie and sleep with my winter clothes on in the middle of summer just so they would be comfortable, all for the sake of saving a few bucks on rent because we didn't want to find another place. Then, of course, the inevitable happened. The electric bill came and it was 4 times higher than usual. A lot. I talked to the other couple about how their electricity use was out of control and suggested we split the bill 25-75 since my girlfriend and I were almost never home. It turned into a huge fight. Their only argument was that we all use the electricity and the AC, so we should pay the same. They wouldn't listen to my arguments, so there was nothing I could do. I ended up paying half as usual, which wasn't fair. After this, the guy and his girlfriend made me pay for their comfort. They started doing a lot of passive-aggressive stuff, like throwing out my unspoiled food while leaving their rotten food in the fridge or using their TV at the highest volume while I tried to sleep. I knew I had to get out of that house. There was no money being saved anymore due to the high cost of the bills. We found an affordable and comfortable house with plenty of room for our dogs, so we pulled the trigger. We talked to the owner of the rental house about leaving, and he had no problem at all. So it was all set. We waited until the couple was on vacation for the weekend, then took every last thing we owned out of the house and moved out. I left them without any furniture or appliances, no stove, no microwave, not even a table to eat on. I left my keys at the entrance of the bedroom door with a note that said, "We couldn't handle your attitudes anymore, so we left with our belongings. Have a nice life wasting your own money. Opie." The owner of the house, who became a very good friend of mine, later told me that the couple claimed I took all their belongings. He knew the items were mine and set them straight. I wish I was there to see the look on their faces when they got home to that empty house. Have fun eating fast food on the floor. Friends, if they left dirty dishes in the sink and moldy food in the fridge, I don't even want to know what their private bathroom looked like. This couple sounds like a bunch of messy slobs, and I feel so bad for Opie having to live with them. If you've ever lived with awful roommates, please share your stories in the comments below, and I'd love to share them in the next video. Next story. When I was around 12 years old, I was walking through a city market with my mom. The quiet buzzing of the lights was only slightly annoying. All seemed well, and I decided to go off to get one of the sample cookies from the back. Seems perfectly normal, right? I grabbed my cookie, which happened to be the last non-burnt one, as another family came into the back aisle. I'm not a particularly social person, so I decided to walk away. This family consisted of a mother and a son, the son being maybe 5 or 6 years old by my estimate, wearing a vibrant and rather unpleasant shade of yellow. The mom had a typical Karen haircut and was wearing a bland red sweater over a bright white shirt and brand new looking skinny jeans. They realized there weren't any more non-burnt cookies, which, in my opinion, shouldn't be a problem. Cookies are cookies, especially free ones. But the child wailed horrifically and noticed that my cookie, which I hadn't taken a bite out of yet, wasn't burnt. Great observation skills, little Timmy. The mom approached me and asked in a sickly sweet tone, the kind you can tell is obviously fake, if I wouldn't mind giving my cookie to her kid. I wasn't sure if the tone was from her having a headache from dealing with her kid, or if she just wasn't a nice person. Since the kid was young, I chose to be nice and broke my cookie in half, offering one half to the kid because I wasn't about to miss out on eating my cookie, nor was I going to grab another one, as I felt it would be rude to the next people. The kid looked confused, which immediately felt off. The mom's face contorted from nice to confused to offended very quickly, as if not offering the entire cookie had somehow insulted her entire family. I was naturally confused and, realizing what was happening a bit too late, backed away and tried to walk off. The lady placed her hand on my shoulder, preventing me from leaving, and held out her other hand as if expecting me to just hand over my cookie. Let me state again that I had tried to share, but Karen and her little troublemaker didn't seem to understand the concept of sharing because he cried like his world was crumbling around him. I managed to pull away from the iron grasp of the lady and speed-walked away. She marched up to me and tried to take the cookie from me. Before she could, a light bulb flickered on in my head. I stuffed the entire cookie into my mouth. Now, these cookies were fairly big, bigger than the basic sugar cookies they used to give, so my mouth was stuffed for a moment. Karen and her child were silent, stunned by what they had just witnessed. 10 seconds later, the gates of chaos were unleashed. Karen exploded at me, yelling all sorts of colorful insults, many of which I surprisingly hadn't heard before. I stood there with the smuggest grin on my face as I slowly chewed the cookie, continuing to rub salt in the wound until the insults turned into discernible noises. Was it wrong for me to do so? Probably. Do I regret it? Absolutely not. I personally would have licked the whole cookie and then given it to her, but eating it was so much better. Opie's way smarter than I am. Next story. I lived in an apartment building as a member of the local free gifting community. We put out gifts on a regular basis for people to pick up and made appointments with people to pick up their gifts, usually within an hour of setting them out, so there was no issue with trash sitting out. The property manager lived in the building and assured us that there were zero issues with the gifts sitting on the front porch for pickup. The gifts were almost always labeled or in paper bags with a name on them. At some point, I started getting complaints that gifts weren't there for pickup when I had set them out. I made sure to tighten the appointment pickup times, clearly label who the gifts were for, and hide things in clearly labeled bags, but they kept going missing. We had had some issues with porch pirates stealing gifts from others, so I didn't consider right away that it was someone in our building until I noticed a pattern of what time the gifts were being stolen, often within minutes of being set out. If they were out at 5 p.m., the rest of the gifts in the area were being stolen in the evening. I got very upset when a gift for a newborn was stolen at lunchtime. I posted in the group that I needed glitter to stop the porch pirates and was gifted some in bright indigo. I wrote a note that said, "Stop stealing gifts for other people," and put it in a paper bag. I folded the bag down double with the edges sticking out for easy opening and stapled one end. I then used a straw to funnel the glitter into the fold so it would fly out everywhere when opened, and stapled the other end. I labeled the bag with a highly distinctive name and set it out on the porch at 4:45 p.m., with instructions to my partner that if it was still there at 10 p.m. when he got home, to bring it inside. Then I just waited. I don't know what I expected, maybe some screams or something, but I didn't hear anything, and the bag had disappeared. 5 days later, I finally broke down and asked the property manager if anything strange had happened recently. She said, as a matter of fact, someone had called to hire a carpet cleaner for an off-schedule cleaning because they had spilled blue glitter on their carpet. I gave her details that I had put a gift out full of glitter, but it disappeared immediately before my intended recipient could get it. Because the glitter was a consequence of them stealing from their neighbors, and there was no way to get all the glitter out of the carpet, they were charged for the damages of a full carpet replacement when they left. Best yet, because theft is a violation of community agreements, their lease was terminated, and they were evicted with 20 days' notice. That person definitely deserved the eviction. I absolutely hate porch pirates, friends, and I hope that person is cursed with expensive shipping costs and getting their packages stolen forever. Next story. I was raised by my abusive grandparents. My grandfather isn't worth mentioning, and my grandmother died when I was 15. She had an aneurysm while on the toilet, passing with the same grace she had while alive. I'm in my mid-30s now, and I don't often think of her, but I do keep one small petty habit. Grandmother was a seamstress, and her most prized possession was a pair of super sharp, fancy, expensive dressmaking shears. I once used them to cut paper, and she made me sleep on the porch for a week. When she died, one of the few things I asked for was those scissors. I have used them to cut everything but fabric for the last 2 decades. I use and ruin them in the kitchen, for crabs, for projects around the house. The other day, I used them as a hammer when I was too lazy to get the toolbox. It's stupid and petty, but nothing beats the tiny spark of malicious glee I feel every time I use those scissors to cut duct tape and then pry open a paint can. Here's to you, Nana. I hope you went to heaven, because I know there's nothing you hated more than the happiness of others. I do understand the scissors thing, though. I didn't know this before a few years ago, but scissors can get pretty darn pricey. I've got a few friends who are hairdressers, and they own scissors that cost $800. Next story. This story happened several years ago when I was still living at my parents' house. I was around 19 at the time, and I used to drive an old pickup truck, which I always parked on the street in front of our house. My parents kept one car in the garage and the other in the driveway on the other side. This way, no one was ever blocked in. Our old neighbors used to host large gatherings of family and friends, and it seemed like once a month I'd come home to find our street lined with cars, all parked at their house. One weekend my parents were out of town, which left the driveway open, so I parked in it because, why not? This was on a Saturday. I realized that our neighbors were having people over. No big deal. It happened regularly, and they were polite and quiet. I decided to run out and pick up some dinner, probably around 6 or 7 p.m. I was gone for maybe half an hour. When I got back, I noticed that someone had parked right smack in the middle of our driveway. It wasn't just any car, though. It was a G-Wagon. I had seen this SUV several times before, usually parked close to the front of our driveway. But this time, they decided to park it in our driveway. Could I have gone and asked them to move their car and park it elsewhere? Of course I could have. But did I? No. Instead, I parked my truck across the entire entrance of the driveway, blocking them in. After a few hours, I got a knock at the door. Guess who it was? The car's owner, having the nerve to ask me to move my truck so they could leave. I'll be honest, I could have moved it, no problem. Instead, I told them that since I'd already gone and picked up dinner, I had no reason to leave until at least the next afternoon. They asked if I could move it because they wanted to go home. I told them again that I had no real reason to leave, and my truck is really loud. I didn't want to disturb the other neighbors by starting it so late at night. I added that they were welcome to come back for it tomorrow. I left the truck there until around noon the next day. I'm not sure how they got home, as this was before Uber and there were no taxis in the area. They were one of the last vehicles to leave the party, but that's not my problem. They should have thought about that before parking in my driveway. Guys, what kind of lunatic parks in someone's driveway and smack dab in the middle of it too? Like, dude, I know G-Wagons can cost a lot of money, but you're not entitled to take up someone's entire driveway. Ridiculous. Next story. So, I moved into a shared apartment pre-COVID and never met the guy whose room I was taking over. He was also selling his bed, so we texted back and forth to settle on the price and other details. I asked if it came with bedding since I had just moved to a new country and had nothing like that. He said it did. On move-in day, I showed up, and the only thing on the bed was this ratty old blanket that looked more like a Christmas tree skirt and 2 pillows to match, the kind you can't even really wash, made of a fake silky material with tassels. It wasn't warm, it wasn't comfortable, not clean, and definitely not usable. There wasn't even so much as a fitted sheet left behind. It was like he went to the Salvation Army and picked up the cheapest bedding he could find. I texted him about it, and he said something along the lines of, well, I said the bed was new. I didn't say the bedding was. Anyway, I couldn't sleep there the first night and went back to my hostel. I bought my own bedding the next day. But this guy left an unbuilt IKEA desk in the corner of the room and said he was coming to pick it up sometime during the week. It wasn't in a box, just bundled up and held together with some masking tape, so it wasn't brand new. I stared at it for days before deciding to take action. I took out 2 key pieces of the desk. Not a full leg, but not a small, easily replaceable screw either. I don't know exactly what structural pieces they were, but I feel confident that he couldn't have built it properly without them. I had to wait until my other roommates were out to toss the pieces in a bin down the street so they wouldn't be able to trace it back to me if the old flatmate asked. Anyway, his girlfriend came to pick up the desk, and I never heard from the guy again. I like to think he couldn't use the desk and knew it was me but couldn't prove it. I really thought the original poster was going to assemble the desk so when they came to pick it up, they'd have to disassemble it. Guys, it would have been so funny to come back to a desk that you took apart, only to have it sitting there fully built again. Oh my goodness, I wish I could have done that. Next story. So, here's my story about getting back at this jerk of a surgeon. For background, I'm an anesthesiologist, and back when I was doing my residency training, there was this loudmouth orthopedic surgeon at the hospital I worked at. Let's call him Greg. He was always complaining about the anesthesia team delaying him, was never happy, and spoke in this loud, abrasive tone, basically treating everyone like peons around him. One day, I was in his operating room wearing a lead apron, as we were doing a case that required x-rays. Unbeknownst to me, I had grabbed the personalized lead apron of one of his colleagues, Dr. Smith, who wasn't working that day. As the case was going on, Greg looked up and saw that I was wearing Smith's lead apron. He stopped what he was doing and asked me, "Are you Dr. Smith?" I replied that no, I wasn't. He then proceeded to flip out and asked, "Why the heck are you wearing his lead then? Take it off now and get a different lead apron from the rack." Being a lowly resident at the time, I bit my tongue and changed lead aprons in front of all the other co-workers in the room because this jerk was making such a big deal out of it. It was a really belittling experience that made me hate this guy. So, the revenge. One day, soon after that experience, I grabbed some lunch at work and went to the lounge to eat. The lounge was empty, so I started to eat my hospital cafeteria sandwich in peace. While eating, I noticed a white coat that physicians wear hanging on the rack. I looked at the name and saw it belonged to that jerk orthopedic surgeon, Greg. After checking to make sure nobody else was in the lounge, I got up and grabbed the sopping wet pickle spear that came with my lunch and placed it in Dr. Greg's white coat pocket and left. Guys, this is one of those petty stories that I wish turned into something more. I feel like a pickle in the pocket was not enough. Guys, leave a comment down below letting me know what you would have done if you were in the original poster situation. Next story. So, back in March, I had surgery. My surgeon told me that I could not be around secondhand smoke or vapor. I worked at a hair salon catering to hair loss clients, so we had a big office space to make wigs and hairpieces. This was also our lunchroom. 3 women vaped all day in this room, and these 3 women picked on me relentlessly. Mind you, I was 21, and these women were like 50. I politely asked all the employees who vaped to please avoid doing it around me as I was recovering from surgery. Did it work? No. It made it 100 times worse. They'd vape in my coffee, in the wigs I was working on, in everything. I tried to bring it up to the manager, who was the owner's son, and that didn't go over too well since he vaped as well. So, I did some research and found out it's actually illegal to vape inside a non-smoking building. I brought this up to my manager, and again he blew me off, so I went to the owner of the building. I had photos of their vape pens plugged into chargers at work, photos of them vaping in the office, and even photos of the manager vaping. The owner increased the rent for the company and threatened to evict them if the vaping continued. The building owner also told the owner of the company I worked for that a client had complained and was allergic to the vapor, so I was never suspected. The building owner also fined them $2,000 or $2,500. I ended up quitting shortly after, as those 3 women drove me absolutely crazy and nothing was being done about it. But that's my petty revenge story. So, the part where the original poster said they'd vape in my coffee, they mean they were blowing vape smoke into it, right? Because that's some disrespectful nonsense that deserves a smack right then and there. Absolutely unbelievable. Next story. When I was in high school, I worked as a stocker in a grocery store. One hot Sunday, I was stocking the ice cream freezer and saw a young woman grab a couple of ice cream bars and shove them in her shorts. Quickly, I found my manager and told him what I'd seen. I pointed out the woman as she was walking out of the store, and he went running. He caught up with her, and I watched from the store entry as he chatted with her for a few minutes in the hot parking lot. I was wondering what the heck they were talking about. As the manager was walking back to the store, I saw her reach into her shorts and toss the bars into the landscape planter. So, his revenge was to tell her the store was doing a survey and had some customer survey questions. Probably scared, she cooperated. They stood there for a good 10 minutes in scorching heat, talking. When he saw the ice cream melting and running down her legs, he finished the interview, thanked her, and came back into the store. We had a good laugh over his creative way to punish the shoplifter. Next story. So, my last relationship was beyond bad. It was all sorts of abusive and controlling. At one point, I had the strength to break up with him, but then we got back together after we discussed some things. Stupid, I know, but yeah, love and all that. Well, anyway, one of the crazy things we agreed on was that he and I would stop drinking alcohol because he was beyond crazy aggressive when he drank, and I wanted to support his sobriety. This is really important. Fast forward about 8 months or so, and we got into this huge fight. I not only broke up with him, but I kicked him out of the house and told him he was never allowed back inside. We'd been living together for over a year at this point. His mom got in touch with me about getting his stuff. While on the phone with her, I could hear him in the background saying to make sure they got everything he owned or bought, as he wanted it all back, apparently even the stuff he gifted me. Honestly, I didn't care. I was happy to get rid of anything related to him. While cleaning our room and gathering everything, I started to come across numerous bottles and cans of alcohol. It seemed he'd been drinking again for a while and was hiding the evidence in the room. He was hiding them under his bed, in his guitar case, rolled up in his clothes, in some backpacks of mine, and so on. He said he wanted everything of his, so any bottle and the few unopened cans I found went straight into the garbage bags of his stuff. By the time I'd gathered everything up, I had 3 bags of stuff, and one was basically just all the alcohol. Dropping them off was just so satisfying. He actually called moments after I left his place, ranting about how petty and immature I was being. My response was, well, you wanted all of your stuff back, and those definitely weren't mine. Plus, I figured you'd probably need a drink to deal with the breakup. I probably ended the call and blocked him on everything. It was the most satisfying thing I've ever done, and probably one of the best things you've ever done as well. Original poster. I hope you're doing well now, my friend. These stories really got me thinking. And I'd like to share my perspective. The roommate story had me cringing. Dirty dishes, dog messes, and AC overuse? Nightmare. I'd have lost it over the unfair electric bill split. The OP's move to take all the furniture was genius. Leaving a note was the cherry on top. I've had messy roommates. That empty house karma is sweet. The market cookie incident is hilarious. I love the kid's audacity to eat the whole cookie in front of Karen. Her entitlement to a free sample? Absurd. I'd have done the same. Sharing half was generous enough. Smug chewing? Iconic. The glitter trap for the porch pirate is brilliant. I'm stealing that idea. Catching the thief with a carpet full of indigo glitter and getting them evicted? Perfect. I hate package thieves. This petty revenge is so satisfying. The scissors story is darkly funny. I get the glee in ruining a cruel grandparent's prized possession. Using them as a hammer? Savage. I'd feel that spark too. Petty revenge can be cathartic. The driveway blocking G-Wagon owner got what they deserved. I'd have parked my truck there too. Assuming a driveway is public? Entitled nonsense. The Alpies come back tomorrow quip was chef's kiss. The IKEA desk sabotage is petty perfection. I'd have tossed those pieces too. Misleading about betting deserves a consequence. An unbuildable desk is poetic justice. The surgeon's pickle prank made me laugh, but I agree, it needed more. A soggy pocket is good, but I'd have slipped in some mayo too. Greg's arrogance earned it. The vaping co-worker's story is infuriating. Blowing vapor into coffee? Disgusting. I respect the LP's legal research to hit them with a fine and rent hike. Quitting was the right move. The shoplifter's melting ice cream punishment is clever. I love the manager's fake survey tactic. Justice served with a side of sweat. The ex's alcohol stash in his bags? Savage. I'd have added a note saying, enjoy your sobriety. The LP's mic drop exit was epic. These stories fuel my anti-entitlement fire. Oops, you're my heroes. That brings us to another end of our Petty Revenge channel. Thanks for stopping by and listening to the stories, friends. If you missed the last episode on this channel, it's an entitled People episode. If you missed it, go check it out, and I'll see you in the next one.